Hi, good afternoon, Lenesik. My name is Adekunle Olanikwekun, a young lawyer in Abuja and team lead of this initiative. I would like to meet you, sir.
My name is J.S Okutepa. I'm a senior advocate of Nigeria by the grace of God. I've practiced law for close to 31 years now. Out of these 31 years, 11 of which I've been a senior advocate of Nigeria. My practice is mainly litigation. I don't do corporate practice, so I'm into litigation full blasts from the beginning to the end, from Genesis to Revelation. And it has been an excruciating journey from the beginning. I used to be a young lawyer, and I still consider myself as young lawyers because a lawyer is always young in reading, studying, getting the latest precedents, improve on himself or herself by trying to see how justice is done or is attained, by being assiduous in studies, in reading, and discovering the latest precedents. So I'm happy for this initiative that you have. We didn't have the benefit and privilege of this internet age where you can meet senior lawyers to relate to you their experiences in practice, what they have gone through. No senior lawyer of note or successful senior lawyer was just vomited from heaven. We had all gone through this pupillage or tutelage, as you may call it, or the learning process, learning the curves. At our time, we didn't have what we call front loading. It was an advocacy. You go to court, you call your witnesses, the judge records, and they are cross-examined. You may not even have the privilege, like I didn't have the privilege of some young lawyers being with me there. By the way, I decided to branch out on my own on a day that everyone appeared to think it was a day of foolish people, April Fool, 1st April 1993. So I set up my practice at number 51 Railway Bypass. That number 51 Railway Bypass was, it's like a room and a parlor. And sometimes I'll be there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. There is nothing like a dime coming from anybody to you. But I remain consistently consistent in going to office. I was not going to the office late, and I did not close early. So I stayed there. Sometimes my companion were Guguru and Furadenono, and we were doing it. And I did not get myself entangled in gluttonous appetite for get rich quick. So despite that I was in serious pains, I was reading. That's why I always have this philosophy that if you want to be a successful legal practitioner, don't chase the money, chase knowledge. And when you chase knowledge and you have gotten knowledge and you are known for being an assiduous and very determined and very focused legal practitioner who takes his or her job with that degree of seriousness and commitment to the cause, even when you are not paid, the judges, your colleagues, your professional associates, your seniors will notice you. And one day you will discover that manna will begin to fall from heaven. And my first experience at acquiring what appears to be a motor car.
So let's see, before you go there, because I see the section on that. So I really want you to share with us what the motivation is in becoming, a distinguished senior advocate of Nigeria, because you are actually one of the very few some of us look up to. I could recall in 2019, you came to Nigerian Law School for a session. I was also invited, and I listened to your story, and trust me, it was mind-blowing. So I really want you to share with the audience, perhaps those that are seeing you for the first time, how your growing up looked like, how you ended up becoming, a lawyer. Because in that your story, you shared the fact that you didn't even attend a secondary school, if I can recall. So I really want you to share this story, the motivation.
No, you are correct. Shall I say that my growing up as a young man was, I came from a family that was very poor. And my father and my mother were completely not educated persons in terms of Western education. And so I was with my father, and I was the only one farming for him. My other siblings were scattered. In those days, nobody take ownership of children. Children belong to all. And so you can have 4 or 5 or 6 children. You may end up not having anyone with you. So was the lot of my father. My other brothers, my senior brothers, my senior sisters, my younger brother were all being brought up in different locations outside of my father's. So I was the only one, like Matthias, that the Lord fell on to be at home to assist my father to farm. In that process, the old man did not encourage me, and indeed did not want me to go to school at all. He wanted me to be a full-time farmer that will, do what he expected me to do. But in that village, I had my age mates, people like late Ali Musa and Yaya Musa, who were from a family that allowed the kids to go to school. So when they come back from primary school, and in the evening, there is evening section, they have this thing they call evening lesson with slate and blackboard. So I will join them as they are studying, doing A, B, C, D, A, E, La, Le, Le, Li, and all of those something. I was joining them, and I was understanding it. While they go to school, I go to farm. While they go to school, I go to farm. But it got a point on the 3rd of September 1977 that I became stubborn, in quotes, and I decided that I must go to primary school. So I ran to primary school, primary 2, at the age of 17 years plus in 1977. And I started in a place called local government school board in Ogbobo, in the then Benue State, which was under Benue State then, before Kogi State was created. So when I went to the class, and because of my knowledge of studying with my contemporaries who were already in class 6, and I was reading so I became too much, in quotes, for the class 2, that the headmaster, Mr. Sebastian Alasotos, allowed me to. So he moved me from primary 2 to primary 3. And because I stubbornly ran to school, the environment at home became too hostile for me. And so my dad was not happy with me, and I couldn't get the best of environment. So I stopped at that primary 3 without having any certificate. So eventually found myself with my elder brother, who was a professional motorcycle mechanic, and then learned motorcycle mechanic from that 1977, 78, 79, and I became expert in it. Meanwhile, my dad was not happy that I ran away from home, and a series of incidents happened to me, including having domestic fire incidents when I was doing mechanic, and all of those things. But eventually, I made up with my dad, who allowed me to come back home. I came back home, but still, because I was still desirous of going to school, so I ran away from home to a place called Enugu to meet my late elder brother who was in the military, who eventually sent me to a school called Igbobike Commercial Institute at number 47 Ogidi Street, Oguye Road in Enugu, where I learned shorthand, typewriter, typing, and all of those something. So, but while I was there, again, as if I was destined to face a series of misfortunes, the environment there was also too hostile for me. And then I have to run away from there on the 1st of April 1980 to meet my maternal uncle, late Sergeant Amodo Abraham Ibunuwani, whom I named my library here after, who was in a place called Mararaba Baesa in Takum local government of the then Gongola state, but now Taraba state. So it was when I got there, my uncle had a friend who was a headmaster of Takum local government primary school, late Mr. Umoru Fonga, who graciously allowed me to write a first school living certificate with other people who were going out, who had concluded their primary 6, and so we wrote. I sat and I wrote my first school living certificate, and I had 265. The person sitting by me, who had asked me, and I thought had 266. So he took first, I took second. So that was how, if you see in my primary school certificate, I graduated from primary school in 1980. So that is the certificate I wanted to go to secondary school. And it will interest you to know that when God has a plan for you, every failure is a stepping stone. Eventually, I had my first school living certificate. Then I came back home with a view that because at 1980 I was already 20 years, and I wanted to go to government teachers college. But when I came back, my immediate younger brother passed to St. Peter's College in Ida, and my parents, he was not with my parents, he was with our aunt, and that aunt didn't have money to pay for the school. So eventually I opted to go and join police so that I could pay for my younger brother school, for secondary school. And my father blessed me. So there are so many stories around that, but let me summarize it. Blessed me. I left home, my father's compound, on the 1st of October 1980 to Makurdi, where I eventually ended up joining the Nigerian police. Unfortunately, I did not go for training because of circumstances that I cannot disclose now. But I decided not to go because it was what I was told I was going to be trained for was to be a police tailor, and I didn't want to be. So I eventually ended up in fire service, and while I was in fire service, I was doing extramural school, home studies, and then one day I saw question papers in English language, and it's 5 of the subjects that I was most interested in then: English language, commerce, economics, government, Christian religious studies. And when I saw the question paper of external November, December external candidates, I could answer all. And I said, if this thing is cheap, then I'll register. So I registered for November, December 1982 in 5 of those subjects. And when I wrote, result came, and I passed the 5 papers at credit level, exception of English language that I had a pass, P7. So I passed all, but not crediting the 5 English language. So eventually, before my younger brother could finish Form 2, I already have my GCE. So eventually, I took that result, went to School of Basic Studies, and then in Basic Studies 1985 to 1987, got my English language credited while in that school. Then 1987, I went to University of Jos, then graduated from University of Jos with LLB second class lower division, and I couldn't get second class upper, not because I was not brilliant, but something happened along the line that I have to write my examination with sickness. I had typhoid, and eventually left for law school in 1990. Then got called to Nigerian Bar on the 10th of December 1991, and then I had my first court appearance on the 19th of December 1991 before the late Honorable Justice Emmanuel Omanchi Ogbole, who was then in High Court number 3 in Makurdi, and I was matured, and so my first opponent in the matter was Professor Agbo Johnson Madaki, who had thought that I was a very senior member of the bar. And so when he discovered that that was my first appearance, he took me out for lunch. We became friends. So I remained consistently in that practice until on the 7th of July 2011, when I was found worthy in knowledge and character by the Legal Practitioner Privileges Committee of the Board of Benchers, and was conferred with the converted rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and got sworn in on the 26th of August 2011. So in a nutshell, that is the synopsis of my journey.
Thank you so much, Lenesik. We are very inspired by that story, and it shows that we should be diligent, doing what we want to go after. So Lenesik, I would really like to ask you, since you said you made mention if you calculate you're over 30 years at the bar, so can you please share with us your best court experience? You know, we've had a lot of cases you've handled, but can you share with us your best court experience? Like there's a particular case you were really involved in that really, you know, tell on you and say, yes, I'm really fulfilled as a legal practitioner.
Well, I think it was the case of 37 students of Benue State University that were wrongly expelled in 1994. I took the matter pro bono, and eventually who is who in the legal profession in that axis were on the other side. I was the only underdog, but eventually the 37 students won at the trial court, and we won at the Court of Appeal. That case actually generated a lot of interest, and very many persons began to look out for me because it was a case that many lawyers were afraid of accepting, because the students got a military officer arrested and put in the toilet, and the then vice chancellor of the university was livid with anger. The military governor then was livid with anger, and at that material time in 1994, 95, 96, there was a decree number 2 where if it is signed, you can be locked up. So very many people were afraid in taking up the matter, but I didn't care, because what was uppermost in my mind was that the student deserved to get justice, and justice I was looking for, and justice I got for them. And so when in the pursuit of justice, there is no smooth road to the Eldorado of justice. Even to go to heaven, the road is very narrow, it's not wide. So you are going to face a lot of challenges there. So my mind was zipped, and I was not afraid. I knew I was not doing anything wrong. Court is established by Nigerian Constitution. Even when military suspended the Constitution, the portion for judex were left intact, even though they tried to oust the jurisdictional court in certain areas. The judicial arm of government was not scrapped, like the parliament, for instance. And so authorities like Chief Chukwuemeka Odumegwu against the government of Lagos State, when his lordship spoke about the rule of law that cannot be cowed even during wartime, and driving inspirations from such legal icons like Oputa, Justice Agbaje, Mohammed Lawal Uwais, Chief Justice Mohammed Bello, and the rest other jurists, Oputa, the Socrates of the Supreme Court, and Justice Coker, and the rest of them. When you read their scintillating judgments that are when you are reading it, the inspiration of the Holy Ghost, so to speak, is there. You are being educated by the English language, the choice of word, and so on and so forth. So that's one of the cases that I can say I was happy about. The next was another one, involved students, 109 students of University of Agriculture. Again, that's one of the cases that gave me joy, because majority of my cases are actually pro bono matters, and I get fulfilled when the causes that I know not, I bear it. I became the eyes to the blind, the ears to the deaf. So I was happy about that, and so many other.
Thank you so much, Lenesik. We've read so many cases actually about J.S Okutepa, and we know you're really doing, excellently well in the profession, and some of us actually look up to you. So Lenesik, I want to ask, for the sake of our viewer, I know there is, and we would like you to share with us what was your most embarrassing moment in court like, if there is any.
The most embarrassing moment for me are the moments where you expected the judex to deliver justice in judgments, then you get judgment devoid of justice. And it happened mostly in election petition cases, where rather than the judex taking judicial notice of political rascalities of Nigerian environment and how politicians have not allowed democracy to take roots in Nigeria. Mike, I've always had the view that what we practice is not democracy. It's civilian rule, and in very crooked ways of doing things. So the most embarrassing moment are where you have an otherwise good cause, well presented, and then principles of technicalities of roadblocks to the will of justice are propounded and upheld by their lordships, who are supposed to be the epitome of justice and light. So when they sit up there and dish out these very, 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 very unfortunate principles of law that advance no justice in our electoral jurisprudence, those are the embarrassing moments for me. Two, the embarrassing moments are when you go to court and rather than the judex joining hands with you to ensure that the rules of professional conduct are respected and obeyed, some judges just chicken out for the fear that those who are engaging in this unethical behavior can go at any length to write petition against them. For instance, sometimes in 2015, for instance, I was in court when a lawyer came to meet me. I was doing election-related matter, and said that he had been briefed to debrief me to take over, contrary to the rules of professional ethics that says that when you know that a lawyer is in a matter, you must not have anything to do with that client until you inquire from. So all my protestations and arguments, drawing inspirations from not only the rules of professional conduct, but the rules of court under which that unfortunate situation took place, was with respect ignored. And what his lordship did was that there was a dispute as a counsel's representation in court. So when you see all of those things, your morale of being an ethically sound lawyer dwindled in geometrical proportion. These are the embarrassing moments. And then when you look at the environment of Nigeria generally, therefore, even the way and manner some of our colleagues, very senior one, including of course some of the members of the inner bar, behave without showing the light that is deposited in us as leaders of the bar, also embarrasses me in the practice of law. It got to a point that a young colleague of mine in office had to shed tears one day as to the conduct of some persons. But I would always preach to my colleagues in chambers to learn and emulate attitude of two principal characters in the scripture. One is Joseph, who ran away from Potiphar's wife. Although he suffered temporarily, he ended up becoming prime minister in Egypt. Second is Daniel, who, despite being surrounded with the perquisites of king's meat and all of those beautiful things around, he refused to join the bagwagon of Asurok boys, in quote, and decided to take only vegetable. He ended up winning even the most difficult king to God, King Nebuchadnezzar. He suffered consequences of his pattern life. So I've always told my colleagues that no matter the pains, take on a standard, and that standard of practice is that corrupt not the judex, no matter what. Don't engage in conduct unbecoming. Go to court, do your case, come back, research. If you lose at the trial court, go to the appellate court. And that is one of the things that I've been doing in my life. I can say without fear of contradictions, I've never, and I will never, pick my biro to write petition against any judicial officer, no matter how bad that judicial officer may behave too much, and in a manner that I'm unable to stomach it, I will leave the rest for God. But if it's an appealable decision, I'll file the appeal and use my resources to fight it. That's been my...
Thank you so much, Lenesi. While you were speaking, you made mention of conduct unbecoming of a legal practitioner. And lately, just last week, it was in the news that members of the legal profession, especially, went to a court in Maya to procure. So I really want to hear your view about the surrounding events, how it unfolded. Like within a week, you got judgment, and even some parties were not even served, as it were. So, and that's generated a lot of controversy. People outside the profession see lawyers as, some people feel we just take laws into our hands, that even the sanctity of the judiciary itself, we lawyers are the one polluting the judiciary. So, as a distinguished LLC, and I know you have your articles in all of these matters as a core litigation expert. So, I really want to hear your views, sir.
Well, I do not want you to use the word procure.
I just said like
some people use that word. It's hard. No matter how bad society has become, I want to give benefit of doubt to our professional colleagues. Mark you, those who filed the actions and the person who decided the matter is a member of the legal profession. And therefore, they got judgment that appears to be inconsistent with settled principles of law. Like I said on Arise Television yesterday or so, when I was invited, My view is that if a judge does not make mistakes, where do you get precedent from? So I salute the judge for making the mistakes. What I will not encourage and not condone is for people to go to the streets and begin to do criticisms of the judgments and using foul language and making commentary that are disparaging of the judex and of the judge that delivered the judgments. Having said that, I think that judgments, like I said on my interview with Arise Television, if it's to be taken to the theater of the appellate court for surgical operation, the judgment will not survive. One, the judgment does not have the blood that can sustain operation in the theater of appellate court. Why did I say so? With respect to the learned trial judge, it appears that both the learned trial judge and my colleagues that filed the action may not have had the benefits of the decisions of the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court on the distinction between a political office holder who gets appointed and gets fired at the whims and caprices of his political appointers, and public servants and public officers of the Federation, as used in Section 318 of the Nigerian Constitution. Now, the provision of the Constitution referred to Section 66, subsection 1F, 107, subsection 1F, and so on and so forth, talks about public officer or public servants of the Federation, of the state or local government, as the case may be. And that is the people that said if you want to contest election, you must resign 30 days to the election. Now, the Electoral Act was not talking about contesting election. Section 84, subsection 12 talks about voting delegates and going to vote at convention of political parties, which is a political activities that has nothing to do with election, strictly speaking, as used in the provisions of the Constitution that His Lordship and the learned senior advocate made reference to. The point I'm making, therefore, is that judgment, once it is subject to appeal, and I urge those who are aggrieved to appeal, because if you look at the provisions of the Constitution, everyone who is aggrieved by a decision, affected by the decision, can appeal. It does not necessarily need to be the party. The Honorable the Attorney General of the Federation was the only defendant. And there is no way you are asking for a striking down of the provisions of law made by Parliament, that the Parliament are not necessary, that is not a necessary party. The National Assembly was not joined. The political party, the person who went to court is not a public servant or a public officer who has the local standard. The person did not show in that proceedings what right of his was in jeopardy by virtue of the operation of Section 84, subsection 12, for him to have far more interest than you and I and any other Nigerians to go to court to have it. So some people are arguing with, and in my view, you may not fault them, that it was an arrangement by the power that be, because the power that be had been very vocal about that sections of the act. And if you notice, an owl cried in the night and a child dies in the morning. Possibility exists that it must be the owl that kills the child. Now, Mr. President, when he was signing that law, had said that he's signing it, but with a caveat that he was going to send a bill to the National Assembly to amend the provisions of the Electoral Act. The National Assembly did not see its way correctly by virtue of the litigation pending in court, and they could not discuss it, so the matter could not reach the stage that the National Assembly could do anything. And so the National Assembly was a hot zone. And I think that the power that being there had decided and then began to say, okay, we must use a lawful means to achieve what appears to be unlawful purpose or self-serving interests. And that's what happened. So my view, therefore, is that I'm not in support of that judgment. That judgment is contrary to settled principles of law. That judgment is in my respective view, par curiam. If it's on appeal, like I said, it may not likely have the blood to sustain the surgery or the surgical knives of the appellate court.
Thank you so much, NSC. It's been fun and informative, having you on the show today. Lastly, the way of departure, we would really like to know, while growing up in the profession, who are your most admired advocates, and also your advice, your general advice to young lawyers as we bring the show to a close?
I will be lying to you if I said I have an admired advocate. I did not have an idea of who. I ended up beginning to like generally some people who had started distinguishing themselves in the legal career, in the legal profession. For instance, I was always in love with Lord Dennis, the master of the rolls. When you read him, you know that that's a judge. I was always in love with my Lord Honorable Justice Okutepa, the Socrates of the Supreme Court, the choice of his language, and so on and so forth, the prose, the beautiful sentence he rendered, the philosophical approach to judgments, the way he sees justice outside of the technicalities of the current way of seeing justice was an amazing something to me. So I always like to read Okutepa. Then as I grew up and I started seeing, Gani became another idol for me, because Gani, once he believes in a cause, he fights it with every drop of his blood. So each moment I get Gani inspired me to take on some matters that I was taking and not being paid. Majority of Gani's cases, he may not win them, but he takes them to court, because courts was the farm of Gani. So those are people and few other persons that I looked on to. Chief G.O.K. Ajayi, for instance, were those legal elephants that when they come to court, you know that respect was there. They carry themselves with courage, candor, and commitments to the principles and ethics of the profession. Well, as to the advice to young lawyers, they should not be in hurry. Don't be in hurry in life. I was to tell you a story of how as a young lawyer, and if I say this now, they say that was then. But I must tell you that as a young lawyer, I trekked for 9 years before I was able to buy what Lord Dennis called being reasonably driven along the road. That car, when you are coming, had no need for a horn, because you know that somebody was coming. And I also drove that car again for another 8 or 9 years before I was able to buy what is called moto. And you must endure. Don't jump from one office to the other. Remain where you are, where you can get knowledge. And except, of course, bad persons, there is no junior working with me who knows his onion that can complain. The salary on paper is not, you can't pay a lawyer. There's no amount you can pay a lawyer. Only a lawyer can pay himself. And that's my philosophy. And my colleagues here know. Sometimes you sit down and you see something. Because you have worked, a laborer deserves his wages. But if you don't work and you want to stay with me because you see that it appears I have arrived, and you want to share in what I labor and sat down to read, to work, to be paid, when you have not sat down, read, work, and make meaning, and you want to get the money from me, you will not get. So I have two sides. The sides that does not respond to indolence. I'll treat you as indolent as you are. If you are entitled to 10,000 naira as stipend, that's what you get. The other side is the generosity type. For those who work, they are my friends. Those who work and those who knows how to do their job. We share things together. We go to eat together. We are friends. Don't look at me as up there. We are together. Because you know what to do. Anyone that knows the road to Lagos is a better person to follow than the person who has the knowledge of Lagos but does not know the road to Lagos. So that's how I grade my colleagues. And you can do your secret investigation. I don't care. The salary on paper is nothing to write home about. Indeed, when I put advertorial looking for young lawyers, the criteria I put there, some people were just running their mouths. How much is the salary? How much you want to earn depends on what you know. My first question to anybody who wants to work with me is, what do you know? What is your value? If you don't have a value as a young lawyer, you are just an empty barrel that makes the loudest noise. Your value, for instance, if a process is produced, how you are able to see with eagle eye some of the fine principles of law that can solve your client's problem. No clients want a lawyer that is creating more problems for him. Most clients want solution. I'm looking for lawyers. If you are a young lawyer and you want to succeed in life, then be a solution bearer. And when you provide the solution, the money will follow. But if you don't provide solution and you are looking for money, you can't get money. Argument is that, you don't have money, how will you eat? What did I eat when I was a young lawyer? Sometimes for 2 weeks, my meal will be fura de nono together with guguru, popcorn, and then gari. And there was nowhere I could say I was going to go to any party or go to any evening club. Is going to club a function of lawyer? No. I don't know how to dance. I don't know how to go to club. My club is my book, and you can see them here. So when I was practicing a young lawyer, I have no closing time. My closing time is when I'm tired. And my resumption time is 7:30. You don't go to court late. And even if you had only one shirt, be neat. Majority of young lawyers today are tired before they even join the profession. By the way they dress, by the way they relate to colleagues, by the way they keep themselves. They are some of them are very dirty in character, in attitude, in behavior, in everything. And if I see a good young lawyer, I identify with them and I talk with them. Yes, I concede to you that some of our colleagues, senior, are mean, but not all of us. I can only be mean to a colleague that does not want to work. You won't expect me to get 1 million naira sitting down here. I'll correct you, you are not improving. I'll correct you, you are not improving. And I come to do the work. I'm not going to pay for efforts. I want to pay for results. When there is no results, I won't pay for efforts. If it is efforts, truck pushers would have been the richest persons. The people who have money are people who are goal-getters, who get results. And there is no issues of law as of today that you cannot find solution to. If you can't find solution legally, you can find solution in negotiation and settlement. Arbitration, conciliation are all instruments of practice. So I urge young lawyers not to be in a hurry. Be patient. Surulere. Be patient. Be focused. If you want to know that your urine foam urinate in one spot, you will see it. Majority of young lawyers want to move from Okutepa to Magaji, from Magaji to SIM, from SIM to Chivaki Olujimi, from Maki Olujimi to our other forefathers in the profession. And if you leave my office or leave any other senior's office in a controversial circumstances, we will ask questions. That is why if you want to go from your principal's office, don't go in crisis. Go in agreement. And I will be ready to bless, because I didn't leave my principal in crisis. They blessed me. Even though when I started my practice, the whole money on me, both home and abroad, both in bank and everywhere, was 50 kobo. And that's another story altogether. That's why the name of my law firm is called Grace of God Chambers. Because somebody helped me, gave me free accommodation for office for 1 year. Carry all the files, gave me. I didn't ask how much. He has already collected his money. May he so rest in peace. Honorable Justice Ibrahim Shaibu Atadoga, who ended up becoming the president of Kogi State Customary Court of Appeal, gave me his office at number 51 Railway Bypass, where I set up 1st April 1993. I had home and abroad, only 50 kobo in my pocket. But today, it's not only 50 kobo that is in my pocket. But if I had not withstood the temptation, and I was jumping from one corner of the country to the other, looking for who will give me this, and I didn't endure pains, I wouldn't have been where I am today. So it is good to endure and be focused, and tomorrow you'll be swimming, not only in knowledge, but in a little change that you too become employers of your colleagues. And then your colleagues will then know that indeed it pays to have patience.
Thank you so much, MC.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So our viewers out there, this is J.S Okutepa SAN, thank you for your time once again.
Thank you for the privilege to speak to young lawyers. And I'm sure that some of them will be upset about the hard facts.